The clause was already on the table when Velith arrived. She had read it 3 times on the transit from the Conclave Secretariat, a single paragraph, 22 lines, embedded in Article 11 of the Administered Boundaries Framework as a technical amendment. It stripped humanity's consultation rights over any infrastructure development within 12 light-years of the Valhari corridor. In the language of the treaty, this was called a provisional coordination deferral. In the language Velith had spent 40 years learning to translate, it was called taking something that belonged to someone else and writing the paperwork afterward. The anteroom where she met the human was small by Conclave standards, a working chamber off the main assembly hall, stone floors, 3 padded chairs, a table of pale composite wood, and a single tall window that looked out over the Prathani esplanade. The esplanade was empty at this hour. The spires of the assembly hall rose against an early gray sky, and between them, if you knew to look, you could see the Conclave's orbital station hanging at the edge of atmosphere like a dim star. The human was already seated. Velith had expected someone older. The Conclave's intelligence assessment had named the Terran delegation's lead attaché as one Dara Sehn, 29 years of service, but that phrase had led Velith to picture a career diplomat of the kind she knew. Gray-templed, comfortable with long silences, experienced at reading a room from the corner of her eye. The woman sitting at the table was perhaps 28 years old in human terms. She had dark hair pulled back without ceremony, a plain gray core jacket with no insignia above the rank band, and a data tablet face down in front of her that she had not touched since Velith entered. She looked up without hurry. "Attaché Sehn," Velith said. She folded her upper arms, the formal greeting between species of different bearing, and took the chair across the table. "Senior envoy." Sehn's Conclave standard was clean, unaccented. "I've read the amendment." Velith settled. In 40 years of diplomatic service, she had learned to read the first 30 seconds of a meeting the way others read weather. The young attaché had not reached for the tablet. She had not arranged papers or opened a secondary display or done any of the small preparatory things that indicated a negotiator who still believed the session was open. She had simply looked up. "Then you understand the framework," Velith said. "I understand the clause," Sehn said. "I'm not sure I'd call it a framework." Velith allowed a pause. Outside, the sky above the Prathani esplanade was beginning to lighten, the gray warming toward the particular shade of amber this planet produced at dawn. She found she was looking at it instead of at Sehn, and she corrected herself. "The Conclave's position," she said carefully, "is that the Valhari corridor represents a coordination problem. 12 development projects across 4 member species, all contingent on the same transit lane. The amendment provides a mechanism for resolving competing claims. It provides a mechanism for resolving competing claims in favor of whichever party controls the Secretariat," Sehn said, "which is not Terra. Terra would retain observer status. Observer status is not consultation rights." Sehn's voice did not harden. It simply stated the fact the way a surveyor states a measurement. The original Article 11 gives us a binding co-decision voice on any infrastructure affecting our registered systems. The amendment replaces that with the right to attend meetings. "There are 47 member species in this conclave," Velith said. 47 distinct development priorities. The framework cannot function if every clause requires unanimous consent. We're not asking for unanimous consent. We're asking to keep what the treaty already gave us." Velith looked at her. The young woman had not raised her voice, had not leaned forward, had not done anything that indicated distress. She held the chair the way someone holds a chair when they intend to remain in it until the conversation is finished. And she watched Velith with the particular quality of attention that Velith had learned to associate, over decades, with people who had already decided something. "Attaché Sehn," she said, "I want to speak plainly." "Please." The amendment has already cleared the conclave's internal review. It will go to the floor tomorrow morning. The co-sponsors are the Drethanu Bloc, the Velhari Merchant Combine, and the Frontier Development Authority. She let that settle. The votes are there. Sehn nodded slowly. I know. Then you understand that what I'm offering you in this room is the opportunity to sign before the vote rather than after it. Velith kept her voice level. If Dara signs in advance, the record reflects a negotiated agreement. If the amendment passes over your delegation's objection, the record reflects something else. What does it reflect? That Dara's concerns were heard and overruled. Velith paused. That is a different posture for your delegation to carry into the next 20 years of conclave membership. Sehn was quiet for a moment. She looked at the data tablet on the table, then at the window, then back at Velith. Can I ask you something? Of course. Not as a formal question, Sehn said. Just between two people in a room. Velith waited. Do you think it's right, Sehn asked, the amendment? The question landed in the room and stayed there. Velith had been asked difficult questions across 40 years of service, procedural challenges, bad faith hypotheticals, the kind of provocations designed to make a diplomat say something her record would not survive. This was not one of those. The young attaché was looking at her with something that was not a challenge. It was a question. Velith found, to her discomfort, that she did not immediately know the answer. That is not the question before us, she said finally. I know, Sehn said. I'm asking anyway. The silence in the anteroom was different from diplomatic silence, the kind that was managed and shaped and used. This one simply occupied the space. Velith thought about the 47 member species, the development timelines, the conclave's internal procedural architecture. She thought about the 12 light years of the Velhari corridor and the transit agreements that had taken 9 years to negotiate. She thought about the text of Article 11 as it had been written and ratified and signed by every party in good faith. The original article, she said slowly, was a negotiated instrument. It was, Sehn said. And the amendment, Velith stopped. Replaces it with something the other parties prefer, Sehn said, not harshly, simply. Velith was quiet. Outside, the sky had shifted the amber deeper now, the first direct light catching the highest spires. Something about the quality of it made her notice, though she could not have said why. The conclave has legitimate interests in the corridor, she said. It was not the argument she had prepared. It was what remained when she stripped the prepared argument back to its structure. I agree, Sehn said. Dara has them too. The original article accounted for both. The amendment accounts for one. She reached for the data tablet, turned it over, and laid it flat again without looking at the screen. I won't sign the amendment, Senior Envoy. I want to be clear about that so we don't spend another hour getting to the same place. Velith studied her. Then what are you proposing to do? Nothing, Sehn said. The amendment will go to the floor tomorrow. The conclave will vote on it. If it passes, and I believe you that it will, then Dara will act accordingly. Act accordingly, Velith repeated. That is a phrase with a great deal of room in it. Yes, Sehn said, it is. There was a quality to the way she said it, not threatening, not performative. Simply factual, the way the original measurement had been factual. Velith felt something move in the back of her professional instincts, something she had not felt in a long time. It was not fear exactly. It was the recognition of a shape she had encountered before and not liked. Attaché Sehn, she said carefully, what does accordingly mean to your delegation? Sehn looked at her for a moment without speaking. Then she reached into the document sleeve beside the tablet and removed a single folded sheet, pressed, pale, the formal stock that carried legal standing across conclave member systems. She unfolded it once and placed it on the table between them, smoothed it flat, and left her hands on either side of it. Velith read it. It was a notification of intent, 60 days from the date of filing, citing Article 31 of the Conclave Charter, the legal mechanism for a member species to initiate a formal review of its membership terms, pending possible restructuring of its treaty obligations. Not a withdrawal, not yet, a 60-day clock and a formal review. Velith looked up. The young attaché was watching her with the composed, untroubled expression of someone who had written the document before getting on the transport. This was prepared before this meeting, Velith said. Before the amendment was tabled, Sehn said, 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks, Velith stopped. She looked at the document again. The filing date was pre-printed. She had not initially registered it. 6 weeks ago was before the co-sponsors had even formally convened. You knew the amendment was coming. We knew the corridor was a pressure point, Sehn said. We watched the Development Consortium's lobbying calendar. The amendment was the predictable instrument. She paused. We prepared the response before the pressure arrived, not after. Velith sat very still. Outside the tall window, the sky was fully gold now, the Prathani esplanade catching the first horizontal light of dawn. She became aware, in a way she had not been before, of the orbital station at the edge of atmosphere, and of the fact that she could now see, against the brightening sky, that there were more objects in orbit than there had been an hour ago. She looked. Those aren't conclave platforms, she said. No, Sehn said. Those are Terran hulls, Sehn said. 12. They've been in transit for 6 weeks. They arrived at the system perimeter at 400 this morning. She did not look at the window. She kept her eyes on Velith. They're here for the review period. Standard delegation support within charter provisions. Article 31 allows a reviewing member to station assets in the host system during the review window. Velith knew Article 31. She had helped draft 3 sections of the associated procedural code. She had never, in 40 years, seen it invoked. She had also never thought to check whether Article 31 permitted military support assets. It did. It had always permitted them. The provision was a formality, the kind of language included because procedures required completeness, never expected to matter. The amendment will still pass, Velith said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Probably, Sehn said. And then the 60-day review will begin, and Terra will present its position to the charter panel, and the conclave will have to decide whether the amendment, as passed, is consistent with the terms under which Terra ratified its original membership. She folded her hands on the table. That's a question about the conclave's own founding documents. The charter panel will decide it, not us. Velith thought about the Drethanu block, the Velhari Merchant Combine, the Frontier Development Authority. She thought about the 47 member species and the procedural commitments they had made when they signed the original charter. She thought about Article 11 as written, Article 31 as written, and 12 Terran hulls sitting at the system perimeter in full compliance with every provision the conclave had ever enacted. She thought about the fact that the document on the table in front of her had been written 6 weeks ago, before the pressure had arrived, that the ships had been in transit for 6 weeks, that the young woman across from her had come to this meeting with no arrangement of papers, no secondary display, no small preparatory motions, because there was nothing left to prepare. You came into this meeting already finished, Velith said. I came into this meeting hoping we wouldn't need it, Sehn said. If you'd had the authority to pull the amendment, we could have had a different conversation. Velith looked at her for a long moment. Then she looked at the document between them, and at the window behind it, and at the 12 Terran hulls hanging in the gold of the new dawn. She had spent 40 years learning when a room had already decided something. She was looking at one now. I'll need to notify the first secretary, she said. Of course, Sehn said. Velith rose. She did not collect her materials. There were none to collect. She moved to the door and paused with her upper arms folded, the formal posture she had opened with, because 40 years of discipline did not leave a person even in moments of significant recalibration. "Attaché Sehn," she said. "The charter panel will not be sympathetic." Sehn looked up. "I know," she said. "We're not asking for sympathy, we're asking for the treaty." Velith left the anteroom. In the corridor outside, her aide was waiting with a communications unit already lit. Velith took it and began composing the message to the first secretary that would, she already understood, cause the morning session to be adjourned pending review, a thing that had not happened in 31 years of conclave proceedings. Through the window at the end of the corridor, the 12 hulls in orbit were still visible. They would be visible from every window in the assembly hall when the session opened. They would be visible from the public gallery, from the delegates' tier, from the first secretary's own chamber. They were not a threat. They were a citation, chapter, article, and subsection. Velith finished the message, handed back the unit, and walked toward the assembly hall. Behind her in the anteroom, the young Terran attaché was still at the table, sitting the same way she had sat when Velith arrived, hands folded, tablet face down, waiting without hurry for whatever came next. The conclave had sent its most experienced senior envoy to the backroom. It had sent the right person to the wrong table.